My name is Lauren Mackley. I've been a teacher in DC public schools for years, and now I'm a member of the Central Office Literacy team. Today, we're going to create a text set using the DCPS resources for the third unit for second grade. After that, in your training, you're going to create a text set for your upcoming Unit 2. All right, so when I was teaching, I did some of the things that the Common Core state standards call for in a text set, but now I'm learning that there are some additional elements. So I would definitely pick text around a topic. I would think about getting good complex text for my students. But I'm learning that the Common Core asks us to even go to the next level with text sets. It asks us on page 33 and in a lot of other parts, it asks us to very, very intentionally build students' knowledge about the world, thinking about how it progresses through a grade, and even from one grade to the next. It also uses this staircase of complexity for text to build from least difficult to most difficult. So students, by going through text more within their range to above their range, they are not only building knowledge, but building their skills as they go. So let's make a text set. The first two big pieces are to summarize your line of inquiry and to identify your anchor text. In DCPS, we are pretty lucky that we have some good thinking already done for our line of inquiry. So I'm going to start with that. So when I thought about what would be my line of inquiry, I went to the unit plan. Again, this is Unit 3 for Grade 2. And I looked at those big ideas and essential questions that students were going to know. So this unit is mostly about weather. It's about hurricanes, tornadoes, and when I really dug into the questioning, I saw that there is the idea of what are different kinds of weather, and then there's the idea of, so how does weather interact with different people? And I went through more of the learning plans, I went through the module, and I looked at some of the questioning within that, and I felt like those are two of the really big ideas this unit is going for. Keeping that in mind, I summarized my line of inquiry like this. How do humans interact with different types of weather? Again, drawing on those big ideas from within the unit. When you build a line of inquiry, you want to make sure that 1, students are building their knowledge about the world. 2, it's something that they can keep going back to over and over for weeks. You don't want it to just be a yes, no, or A, B, C, or D question if students are going to keep building their knowledge around this for weeks. So this is the line of inquiry that I'm going to use for my text set. So now the other key piece in the beginning is to identify your anchor text. So I'm using the phrase anchor text a little differently than you might be used to. When we talk about an anchor text for a text set, it's going to be one of the most complex texts within your entire unit. It's going to meaningfully connect to this whole line of inquiry, and it's going to be something that students are going to come back to and return to over and over and over. So you have anchor text within your unit, like for example, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. In a unit anchor text, you're going to have learning plans built around it. You're going to use it for instruction. You may or may not return to it over and over and over like you do for your text set anchor text. So just know that those two phrases can mean slightly different things depending on the context. When I thought about the anchor text, I thought really, really hard about what would most help my students understand this line of inquiry and what is the most complex text in all of the things I'm considering. So let me walk you through a little bit of my process. So, this by Lexile, in terms of its quantitative complexity, was one of the most complex texts that I had in the whole set. So my Mama Had a Dancing Heart, Lexile 1010. So you can see that quantitatively, it's actually well outside of that second, third grade band. However, in the end, I decided not to use this for my anchor text for a couple of reasons, both because of complexity and the entire line of inquiry. So although the quantitative complexity is high, the qualitative complexity I thought wasn't quite as high. When I thought about the structure and the familiarity of the content, I thought that it wasn't quite as complex qualitatively as some other books in the set. I also wasn't sure that it was the most relevant to the entire line of inquiry. Remember, that's how do humans interact with different types of weather. It does talk about a couple different types of weather. It talks about kind of hot days in the summer. It talks about kind of cooler days in the autumn and a little bit about the snow in the winter. But thinking about all the types of weather we want in this whole text set, I didn't think that this was going to be the most relevant to this entire line of inquiry. I did, in the end, choose a book that might surprise you a little bit for the text set anchor text. It's on the same day in March, which might surprise you because quantitatively, it's actually not that complex. And remember, you want to be going with your most complex book for most of your anchor text. It's 540, towards the lower end of that second, third grade band. However, like there are always exceptions to every rule, this is one of those exceptions where the qualitative complexity is a lot higher than the quantitative. So if you look at this book, every single page has a different type of weather on the same day in a different part of the world. It has a lot of those elements of qualitative complexity. So it has some very unfamiliar vocabulary. I don't know what a wild Chinook is. It has some kind of inferential knowledge, like thinking about why it would be a dragon-shaped patch. There's kind of a bigger meaning there. And in terms of structure, it has a pretty complex structure where it uses geography to sequence the vignettes in the book. So this is one of those exceptions, quantitatively not so high, but qualitatively it is one of the most complex books that students are going to read. I also picked it because it is really, really relevant to that whole line of inquiry. Since it's the whole world, it has almost every type of weather you can think of. It has fog, it has hail, it has monsoons, as well as kind of your more everyday weather. So I thought this would be a great pick for the anchor text for both of those reasons. Identifying our anchor text, check. Now we are on to choosing the supporting text. So if you think of like a sports team, this might be kind of your team captain. You have that set. Now you have all these other players trying out wanting to be on the team, and you have to decide who makes the cut and who doesn't. And similarly to your anchor text, you're going to be thinking of the complexity, the line of inquiry, as well as your range. Let me talk to you a little bit about some books that did and didn't make the cut. All right, so The Earth and I, although it does have some decent references to weather, to our line of inquiry, this one did not make the cut. And you might guess it's because of the complexity. Lexile 50 is way below that second, third grade band. This is not a complex text for most of my students worthy of reading and reading. So this one did not make the cut. This is another one, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. It is a unit anchor text. We are going to use it for learning in other ways. But my personal opinion was that it was not quite as relevant to the line of inquiry about actual real-life weather and students building knowledge about that. You know the book, you know it talks about tomato tornadoes and, oh my goodness, what else? Giant meatballs coming out of the sky. So I didn't think it was as relevant to the line of inquiry. You might disagree. It might be in your text set, but it's not in mine. There are a couple other books that also didn't make the cut for similar reasons. They're not going to be in my text set for my whole class, but I can still use them intentionally. So for example, Rain connects to that line of inquiry. As you can see, Lexile 120, a little too low for my whole class, but this could be something great to use in a guided reading group or an independent workstation for students at a lower independent reading level to still be building their fluency and their content knowledge around this topic. This is another one, Gail Gibbons, Lexile 620, so kind of in the middle-ish there. I might actually use this for extension. We know that Gail Gibbons, especially qualitatively, has really rich, complex informational text. I, in the end, chose not to include it because it's more about the seasons than weather specifically. We know there's a connection, and this could be a great extension for students to explore and extend this line of inquiry. So this could be, again, not in my text set, mine, but it could be great for the line for some extension. There are lots of good books that didn't make it in, and another reason is range. There are some beautiful books that were just kind of similar to each other in terms of their narrative structure. It doesn't mean you can't use these books, it just means you're not going to use them in this particular way. So here is what did make the cut in the end. So now that we have checked that all these books are appropriately complex, and I have, you can see that they are all nicely within this Lexile range, and they're also pretty qualitatively complex. I have checked that they're all within the line of inquiry and that they have a good range of types of text. Now we're going to get into ordering the text. So the first place to start is complexity. The whole kind of magic of doing text sets in this way, led by the Common Core, is that by starting just out of the range of our lowest readers and by stair-stepping up and up and up to more complex text, on the same topic, students are gradually building their knowledge. And by the end, they can access some very complex text because they've had all this knowledge building. There's actually research I just heard that students learn and internalize vocabulary 4 times more quickly when they're reading on a topic rather than scattered topics. So that makes me think of some of the genre-based instruction I did, jumping around different topics. Doesn't mean it was bad, but I'm really excited to do this really focused topical instruction. All right. So a good place to start is to know you have your anchor text first, and then from there to go from your lowest Lexile and then to your highest Lexile. So we have Down Comes the Rain at a Lexile 560. Let's see what else we have. Safe from the Storm and Gilberto and the Wind. They are both Lexile 680. My Mama Had a Dancing Heart, 1010. We know it's our highest, so it's going to be later. Oh, we have another one, Frog and Toad All Year 300. So we're going to kind of tuck it in down here. We have The Big Snow, Lexile 740. Wild Horse Winter, I was not able on a few websites to find the Lexile, so I look at it and it looks like qualitatively kind of in the middle of the complexity band of these texts, so I'm going to take my best guess at it. Where Would You Rather Live? An article about hurricanes and earthquakes, Lexile 840. And then we have Weather, Poems for All Seasons, an anthology of poems about weather. And you probably know that Lexile isn't a good measure of complexity for poems. So again, we're kind of going to have to use our judgment. All right, so you kind of roughly have your text ordered now. Roughly starting with the anchor text, going from lowest to highest in terms of quantitative complexity. And I have thought a bit about qualitative too. Now, in your order, you don't want to stop there, you want to check your line of inquiry. So when I was doing this, I really had to think, are students gradually building the knowledge they're going to need to continue to answer this question and continue returning to this anchor text with more and more levels of meaning? All right, so let me think about this real quick. So Frog and Toad All Year, it has some different kind of basic types of weather. It has snow, it has wind, it has some hot, sticky days. I might want to read some excerpts early on. And then Down Comes the Rain is a really nice kids informational text about different types of precipitation and a little bit about how kids interact with it. So I think kids are getting some basic knowledge about sort of more common weather early in the set and a little touching on how humans interact with that weather. Now we have Safe from the Storm, which is about a little girl who survives a tornado, and Gilberto and the Wind, which is also our module text, which is about a little boy and all these lovely ways he interacts with the wind in its many forms. So in some ways, I can think about tornadoes as an extreme form of wind. So in terms of my line of inquiry, I would want to read Gilberto and the Wind first, so we can start to think about more familiar types of interactions with wind, and then think about how a more extreme type of wind influences humans in a different way. Right? So I'm going to make that switch in the order because of my line of inquiry. Then moving on down the line, next I had Wild Horse Winter and The Big Snow, articles about a blizzard and how it influences a human city. And this is also about heavy snows and how it influences a band of wild horses. Some people might not include this because the line of inquiry is about humans, but I'm going to because it shows how snow influences the horse's food supply and their shelter, which is a reality for some humans, but not represented in any other text. So thinking about it, I think it's nice to have them together. I might actually put this one first because it's a little more familiar. And this, the Wild Horse Winter, we could start to think about, well, how would this blizzard have influenced us if we didn't have houses like the horses? That's my judgment. Your judgment might be a little different. And the important thing is that we're really critically thinking about these two pieces. Then we have where would you rather live, focusing especially on hurricanes and how they influence people. I think that's great to have late in the set because I know hurricanes are kind of weather that combine wind and rain, and that's something that students have learned about before. Then we have My Mama Had a Dancing Heart. It is one of the more complex quantitatively with its lexile. And so I think it's good to have later in the set. It also gets into the idea of seasons and the connection to weather a little bit. So it's kind of nice to have it towards the end when students have been learning about different types of weather. So now we have our anthology of poems, and I might choose to actually read excerpts of this throughout the text set and kind of pair the poems on each type of weather with the text. That would be one choice of order. All right, so this is how I would go. I would have my anchor text, and then I would go from here to here, all the while kind of dipping back in and out of that anchor text, building our knowledge. And I think that that shows a really nice range of complexity as well as real progression in this line of inquiry. So this would be several weeks of work for you and your students. So now that I have this text set, my next steps are really to plan the instruction. I'm going to think about the vocabulary work that will go into this. I'm going to think about within my close reading block, when I'm going to read, when students are going to read, the different kinds of reading work that are going to happen, how students are going to write about these different texts. And by the end of engaging with this very purposeful text set, students are going to be able to answer in a very deep way and also with citing evidence. All my students are going to be able to answer this line of inquiry. How do humans interact with different types of weather? Thanks for joining me in purposefully building this text set. Good luck in making your own text set for Unit 2.